We have some significant prospect signings today, including some big names for the Philadelphia Flyers and the Seattle Kraken. Plus, we have some significant injury updates, including Habs forward Jonathan Jerard. Could his time with the Habs come to an end this summer? All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news to talk about here today. Let's get started first up with some pretty significant prospect signings. Now, some of these names are not going to be a huge surprise, but they are going to be possibly significant pieces of the future for these NHL teams. The Seattle Kraken have signed their very first ever NHL draft choice. Center iceman Matty Beniers leaves the University of Michigan to sign his pro contract with the Kraken. So, of course, he gets a 3-year entry-level deal. I know Ron Francis has already revealed he will wear the number 21. Of course, this is going to be a big-time player, I think, for the Kraken. He's a real solid 200-foot player. Good offensive instincts, good defensive prowess as well. So we'll see just how quick of an impact he'll have on this franchise, but being the first pick, number 2 overall, and being, such a solid hockey player, he's had a good year in Michigan. That team certainly did not have the ending of their season they were hoping for. They were a loaded, stacked team hoping to win a national championship, and they lost in the first game of the Frozen Four and were out. Of course, he also had a solid showing at the World Juniors. Of course, that tournament wasn't completed, but Beniers certainly had an opportunity to represent his country multiple times as well, and had a good showing for USA. So a real solid player going to the Kraken. The Philadelphia Flyers have also signed Bobby Brink. Now, he was a second-round pick in 2019. It wasn't, quite the high-level, prospect at the time that was going to get all the attention, but certainly was viewed upon as being a real strong player. And now he leaves college hockey and national champion after playing with the University of Denver and helping lead them to a national championship. He put out 57 points in 41 games this year. Brink has certainly developed into a very solid offensive hockey player, which was not a huge surprise based on what he was, what was being said about him when he was drafted. It's basically he's coming to realize those aspirations of what he was being discussed as a top-level prospect. But obviously, like I said, at the time, there was a lot of prospects that were looked upon as being, a little bit more complete or a little bit more ready, which is why he slipped to the second round. But still, Brink has had a heck of a season here, and we'll see how much of an impact he can have in Philly. Of course, all eyes now are going to be watching his teammate, Carter Savoie, who was a 4th-round pick of the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, he's the brother of Matthew Savoie, who's expected to go in the top few spots of the 2022 NHL draft this summer. But Carter Savoie has really come a long way as well. Could turn out to be a real solid steal for the Oilers as a 4th-round pick. I'm kind of curious. I'm pretty sure he will sign with Edmonton, and he very well could get into some playoff action. So it could be, a big boost for him as well. So a couple of these young stars certainly going to have major impacts. We have some other deals as well to talk about, including the Anaheim Ducks signing Blake McLaughlin. Now, he was a 3rd-round pick back in 2018, completed his 4-year tenure at the University of Minnesota, so he leaves college hockey. He gets a 2-year ELC because he's a little bit older, but still another player who certainly developed solidly in 4 years and then will join the Ducks at the NHL level. The Winnipeg Jets have also announced a pair of signings today. They've signed Daniel Torgerson, who is a winger out of the 2020 draft, taken in the 4th round, a Swedish player. He's 20 years old, 6'3", 200 pounds. Looks like he has some real solid potential. And they also signed a Finnish prospect who was a 2019 4th-round pick, center iceman Henri Nikkanen. So he's 6'4", 200 pounds, been playing in league in the past couple of years. So a couple of very interesting prospects there for the Winnipeg Jets. I'll be curious to see when they'll make the jump to North America. I didn't quite see the updates. I don't know if they're planning to come to North America and finish the season between Winnipeg and their American Hockey League affiliate, Manitoba. That is a real possibility. That wouldn't be shocking to see. Get them a chance to get a few games in here and kind of get acclimated to the North American scene and see where things go for them. But a couple more prospects under contract. So it's been a big day for prospect signings for sure. We also got a word out of Boston as well. They've signed a 2-year contract extension. He's not really a prospect anymore because he's played a fair bit of games, but Oscar Steen is getting a 2-year extension in Boston as well. So both years under $1 million. So a good value signing there for the Bruins. Steen certainly had his opportunities to play in decent stretches here at times this year. So a good player for them to be keeping around to see how much further he can develop. Of course, some injury updates. We saw the Vegas Golden Knights bring back Max Pacioretty in last night's action, so he's returned off of long-term injury reserve. But to do that, 2 more players had to go on LTIR, and that's Brett Howden and Nicholas Hag, the defenseman. So certainly they're still very, very tight against the cap. Doesn't look like Mark Stone's going to be able to come back, assuming they make the playoffs. And Vegas has been playing well as of late. They're certainly making a late season charge to get into the playoffs. We've seen the LA Kings, Dallas Stars, kind of, win some, lose some. Haven't exactly been red hot as of late. So they're kind of creating an opportunity for Vegas to snag one of those spots. To be honest, I think the LA Kings are very vulnerable based on their schedule, based on where they're at positioning in the standings. If the Kings are currently in 3rd place in the Pacific, I could see them maybe falling out. If Vegas catches them, they're not even guaranteed to be in a wild card spot. I mean, they could, but you get Dallas and Nashville in there, and it's going to be a real tight race to the end, I think. It's hard to say, but right now, I know the math is still a little bit against Vegas. They still have, a situation where, like, I know to get into the wild card spots, there's some games in hand there, like the Dallas has, which will come in handy if they can pull off some points out of those games. But I know right now for Vegas, like I said, I think they have a better shot at sneaking up and grabbing the spot that LA's in. Myself and the Kings are vulnerable to maybe get bumped out, but we'll see how that goes. Obviously, getting some of these players back will obviously be a big help. Now, the other team we want to talk about here today is the Montreal Canadiens. Unfortunately, they have some more injury updates here, and you have to wonder for some of these players too. Like I said, could this be the end of the road of their tenure with the Montreal Canadiens? You have to think it's a real solid possibility, given what the team is going through, what the players are going through. Now, when it comes to goaltender Jake Allen, he left last night's game against the Maple Leafs, but he left with what appeared to be, they called it a lower body injury. It looked like it was a leg injury, could be a groin. I know he already had a groin injury this year that he was out for a fair bit of time with. I don't know if it's that or like in the hip or knee, but certainly he extended his leg to make a save and then had trouble with it. Obviously hurt himself while doing that and ended up going off. I know he spoke to Sportsnet Habs reporter Eric Engels after the game and kind of referred to this as the season from hell. I mean, not only is the team not having any kind of level of success like it did last year, but he himself has had a hard time battling to stay healthy. He's had multiple injuries this year, but even though his stats may not be the prettiest, he's been real solid for the Montreal Canadiens, has been a real good soldier for them this year, especially where Carey Price has not played any games. We don't know if he's going to. I mean, there's speculation that it's possible. He has been practicing more with the team as of late. He did go on a recent road trip. Doesn't mean he's going to play, but it's certainly, like I said, there's a lot of speculation. And if he does try to play a few games, that it might be looked upon as being a bit of a showcase to see if there's any opportunity for the Habs and Carey Price to separate this offseason and have him be traded to another team. Of course, it's not going to be an easy deal given his contract, the term, the money, the injury history that he now has. Like it's not going to be an easy task by any means, but something that they will probably at least explore to see what they can do. And when it comes to Jake Allen, he still has another year in his contract, good value for what he offers. I think his future in Montreal is probably going to be determined by what they decide to do with Carey Price. It wouldn't be overly shocking if Price doesn't go anywheres that they come back next year with Price and Allen as the tandem. I mean, they still have Samuel Montembeault, who they could decide to keep around as well. Somebody who can be like their number 3. I guess they still have Caden Primo. I don't know how much more time they want to allow for him to be kind of percolating, seasoning in the AHL. I know his opportunities in the NHL, you could tell this year that he wasn't quite ready for a full-time spot. So I don't know how they want to handle things in that regard, but you have to think there's going to be some turnover in that regard, in that position. And Jonathan Drouin, unfortunately, had to have wrist surgery, and his season is over. He's missed a decent amount of time over the past couple of years. He's going to be entering the final year of his contract. So that's why I speculated on the fact of, do you think this is a possibility that his time in Montreal is over? Do you think he could have already played his last game? I mean, if you look at the last couple of years, last year he put up 20 points in 34 games. He left the team. Obviously, I got a leave of absence when he was, we found out much later that he was kind of battling some mental health stuff and obviously sought some help and therapy and obviously came out the other side much better. I know he spoke pretty openly about what he went through, but he didn't come back and appear in any playoff games during their long magical run to the Stanley Cup final. Durant was not a part of it. I know he's faced a lot of criticism. I know he's faced a lot of pressure in Montreal, and I have to think that there's a good chance of that might have had a lot to do with what he was struggling with here. Of course, this year he comes back and he puts up 23 points in 44 games. So again, not overly great. And I know trading a player who's been, missing a decent amount of time and not exactly letting it up is not easy, but he's going to be entering the final year of his contract at $5.5 million. Even if Montreal wanted to retain some salary, they could retain as much as 50% for the final year, which is probably something that more teams are more likely going to do with only for 1 year, especially if they're not expected to necessarily, need all that cap space, because they may not exactly be, signing a lot of free agents or big deals, right? I mean, they're probably going to take a step back from where they're at when it comes to their payroll. I would think they'll probably try to shed some money, build in more youth, and kind of start rebuilding, would be my anticipation that way. So, would a team be willing to take on Jonathan Drouin in a new market, give him a new fresh start, making against the cap, say $2.75 million or something like that? Like, that's certainly, to me, something that would be reasonable. I think there'd be a number of teams that would be willing to give Drouin a chance. I mean, he's still 27 years old. The kid is very talented. I mean, he's not even a kid anymore. He's certainly a grown man, but I remember watching him in junior for the Mooseheads. Like, he's extremely talented. And I have to think that after having a bit of a rough start to his career in Tampa, he had the situation where he basically had a contract holdout, came back and then got traded to Montreal. And you know what? As much as it was, maybe in some ways a good move for him, it didn't really, it was tough on him. It's a tough market to play in. And when you are in that kind of a trade, 1-for-1 for a young stud prospect defenseman like Mikhail Sergachev, who's been an extremely important piece of the back end for the Lightning in the last number of years since that deal, it's really, really hard to live up to expectations. It's been a bit of a yo-yo in terms of how the team has done and how he's handled things, and not everybody can deal with that. And you have to think that as much as that, it's probably as much mental as it was anything else for his struggles. Like, it's not an easy thing to do when it comes to professional sports. It's extremely difficult sometimes to play in certain markets, and I have to think that might have had a big role in it. So could he be traded with like I said, with 50% retained, 1 year left? I would think Montreal will be able to find a taker for that. He does have a modified no trade, but it's only a very few number of teams that can be blocked. So to me, I think he gets a fresh start somewhere else, and he's likely played his last game as a Montreal Canadien. But I'd like to know what everybody thinks down in the comments below. Let me know if you think Jonathan Drouin's time in Montreal is over. What about Jake Allen with his injury likely being season ending? Will he be back next year? Give me your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. Up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.